it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card combining some Lawn Fawn sets, including I Like Naps, Hang In There, Two Can Do It, and a Bug Deal. So I've stamped my images out in Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink on some Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. I'm going to start with my sloths, and for them I'm using E42, E43, and E44 for their fur. Started with the E44, and I'm going to lay in some shadows around the undersides of the legs and along the back of the head and body, and I also put a little bit under the chin so his face would look more pronounced. And then I'm going to begin blending that out with the E43. I really like the dusty brown quality of these particular tones, and I think it suits a lot of furry creatures really well, and I think it looks great for sloths. So I'm making sure to color over the edge of that E44 so that the color gets broken up and gets nice and smooth as it transitions from shade to shade. And then I will come in with my lightest tone, which is the E42, and I'll fill in all of the rest of him. Once I get through, I'm going to do a second layer off screen, and I've had some questions about that recently, but basically what it means is I'm just going to color one more layer directly on top of the colors that I've just done. And what that does is it smooths out the blend, and it also increases the saturation of the coloring that you've just done. Then I'm going to move on to the face, and I'm going to go slightly lighter using E41, E42, and E43. Going to keep the darkest on the outside edges and the highlight in the center. And then when I get to the patches around his eyes, I'm going to go darker. So I'm going to go back to my E44, but I'm going to add in the E47. I'm also using the E43, which I used on the fur. I'm going to put that E47 on the outside edges and blend over the eye with the E44. And stop right there at the eye so that I can go over the edge of that with the E43, so it will lighten those eyes up a bit so you can see them nice and visibly. And then I did the second sloth off screen just because I was using the exact same shades, and I thought it might be nice to do a bit of a shorter video today. I've been doing a few longer ones recently, so I thought I would try to keep this one under 20 minutes. For the branches, I decided to go with a more grayish tone. The E70s are great for this. So I picked E70, E71, and E74. I'm going to put that darkest color on the underside of each branch and color up toward the top where the light would be hitting it the most. I'll also use that lightest shade to color the cut ends. I did a second layer on all of those, and then once that was dry, I decided to go in and add a few extra details with the E79, just adding some little swirls and burls and some lines by doing little dots and dashes just to give it some wood grain texture. And I went ahead and left it in here for all three of them just so you could see how to just quickly make them each varied by putting those little details in different areas of each one of them. Then I'm going to move on to the small leaves. For those, I'm going to use G40, G43, and G46. So I'm starting with the G46. I'm going to do all three of these real quickly since they're all right next to each other. I'll blend that out with the G43, and I'm just saving a little bit of room at the tips for that G40. And then off screen, I'm going to do the leaves that are attached to the tree on the right. For these larger leaves, I wanted them to look similar, but just be slightly different since they're so much larger. So I added in one extra shade with that G28. I'm using that to outline the veining in the leaves. and then I blended that out with the G46. Now I'm going in with the G43, and then I'll come with the G40, which is my lightest, and just blend everything out so that we get some nice dimension on those leaves. And then I'm going to switch up for a more yellowy green for this fern type leaf. I'm going to use YG11, YG13, and YG17, starting with a little YG17 on the underside of each of those separate leaves that make up the plant. And then I'm blending up with the YG13. And I'll save a little room at the very top for a touch of that YG11 for a nice highlight. And then for my last leaf, that Monstera leaf, I'm going to go for an even more yellowy green. I picked YG00, YG01, and YG03. This time I'm going to add that YG03 down the center line that's been drawn, and then a little of that under each little part that kind of breaks away from the stem. And then I'm blending that out with the YG01 and filling in the rest with the YG00. Once I have that all done, I'm going to switch up to some reds or some pinkish reds. I picked R20, R22, and R24 for that. And I'm going to start with my lizard. I wanted to have a few little fun pops of some unexpected color in this little jungle scene, since everything is pretty neutral and green so far. So I did the R24 on the bottom of the body and down the legs, blended out with the R22 and then the R20 for the highlight. I'm also going to color in my hibiscus flower, and I just used the darker two shades on that, and then I went back and added a bit more of that R24 to darken things up really close to that stamen. I'm also going to do the outer stripes on both of my butterfly's wings with those shades. So I'm just blending from the bottom toward the top, darkest to lightest. So just leaving a little room for that R20. Then I'm going to bring in some purple, and I'm using V22, V25, and V28. So with that V28, I'm going to color in the main part of the butterfly's wings, and I'm also going to do the stripes down the lizard's back. Then I'm going to blend that out with the V25 for the midtone, and still squeezing all three shades even on those tiny stripes on the lizard, because I just wanted there to be, extra dimension there. So real quick to color those in, and then the final shades that I'm going to use is Y13 and Y15 to do the spots on the butterfly's wings and also the stamen on the hibiscus. And then I'm going to take my black Sakura Jelly Roll pen and just go over the eyes of my sloth that has his eyes open. I had a little like a crusty bit on the end of that pen, so I just restarted that off to the side and then went over them one more time. And then I'm going to trim these images out with their coordinating dies. So I'm going to be using this card sketch today to create my card. This is for our current Lawn Fanatics challenge. I have die cut a piece of Bristol Smooth Surface cardstock with the outside in stitch rectangle stackables, and now I'm taking some Distress Oxide in Twisted Citron, and I'm going to do a large stripe from the top right corner to the bottom left to mimic those stripes that are on the card sketch. So I just wanted there to be kind of this yellowy green glow in the background. If you've never used a card sketch before, they are a great jumping off point if you just are having trouble figuring out a layout. They can give you a lot of great ideas. So I spritzed some water onto an acrylic block, and I'm flicking that all over the surface of that card panel. and then I'm going to blot that up with a paper towel just to give me some little white dots. Then I'm going to take some Mowed Lawn Distress Oxide ink and press that onto my acrylic block as well, and do some splatter detail with that using a fine tipped paintbrush, so I can get some nice small droplets just to create a little more movement and interest on that background. I'm also going to do some splatter with that Twisted Citron once again. It'll be a little bit more concentrated in this form, so it'll still give me some nice splatters on there that will show up against the Twisted Citron that's ink blended on there. And then finally, I'm going to take some of this coppery gold metallic watercolor from Gansai Tambi, the Starry Colors, and I'm going to flick that onto the background as well. That's going to be more of a subtle detail, but when you tip the card into the light, it's really going to shine. I'm going to set that off to the side to dry, and once it has fully, I'm going to take the tropical vine borders, and I die cut those out of some Noble Fir cardstock from Lawn Fawn. And I'm going to use my Barely Art Precision Craft Glue to add some liquid glue to the back of these. It has that super fine tip, so I can get down that center line and then also add a little dot to the backs of each of those tiny leaves. And I'm going to use those to just emphasize that stripe to go along with that card sketch once again. Just added a tiny bit extra glue underneath that leaf. And a lot of these are going to get covered up in the final card once I place my images, but I wanted there to be a little bit of something in the background just to add to that jungle feel and to just, continue with the theme of that card sketch. So I'm going to run this one right beside the first one from the top left to the bottom right. And then I'm going to snip off any little bits that overhang the outside edges of that panel. Before I go any further, I want to stamp my sentiment, and I'm doing that in VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I'm doing the one that says Hang In There from the Hang In There half-sized stamp set. And I did stamp that down twice to make sure I had a nice bold impression. Then I'm going to pop my card base in my MISTI, and I'm using a piece of Lawn Fawn Cilantro cardstock, stamping in Noble Fir ink. And I'm using the Sleepy Sloth one more time from the I Like Naps stamp set, and stamping also the little Z's and Take It Easy. So I'm going to glue that down to my card front. And I did get a little bit of that Distress Oxide ink smeared on there, but it's going to get covered up, thankfully, so nobody will know except you guys. Then I'll bring in my images, and I'm going to start to stage my little scene here. So in the card sketch that I showed you guys, there was a kind of upside down U shape or rainbow shape in the center. And instead of adding one rainbow shape in the center, I'm going to add the two sloths, which their bodies kind of form that U shape. The one is upside down and the other one would be right side up. So I'm going to add two of those on the card. And that's something else that you can do with card sketches. They are just a jumping off point. They are open to interpretation, so that's just something to keep in mind. You can always mix things up and, do it your own way. It's meant to, encourage your creativity, not stifle it. So I'm going to add one to the bottom-ish left and one towards the top right. And then I'm going to add a leaf cluster to each one to cover up the part where the branch is kind of disconnected there. So it looks like there's more of a tree on both of those edges, and it's just gotten cut off by the edges of the focal panel. So I'm going to just add those leaves over top up there. And then I've got a couple extra of these smaller leaves that I'm going to use to add a little bit more greenery to the ends of the branches that the sloths are on. So I have the two larger ones and then one smaller one. I'm going to add that one to the bottom branch, just so it helps kind of direct your eye toward that sentiment. Then I wanted to add that third branch that has the leaves already on it, but it was a bit too long. So I trimmed off the end with my Cutter Bee Teflon coated scissors, and then I'm going to add some liquid glue to the back of that as well and place that between the two sloths. And that is going to be where my lizard is going to sit. So I'm going to add him. At first I thought I might tuck him behind the branch, but I decided to add him over top. And then I've got my two little butterflies. I'm trying to still keep everything mainly in that stripe. So I'm going to add that close to the sloth and then the other one as well. And then I wanted to finish off the card with a bit of some shimmer. So I'm grabbing some Stardust Stickles and adding it to the edges of my butterfly wings and also the little spots and the stripes on my lizard and the stamen on the hibiscus. And that is going to complete my card for today. So I'm going to lift that up to the camera and give you another peek at the inside. Leave me a comment down below and let me know how you guys like to use card sketches. Is it something that you use kind of all the time, or something that you forget about or you've never tried? I'd love to chat about it. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Ring that notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. I post new ones every Monday and Friday. If you're interested in these products, you'll find them listed and linked in the description bar below. And if you'd like to keep watching, here are 2 extra videos I thought you might also enjoy. Thank you guys so much again. Have a great day. Bye-bye.